Hey there. In this video, I'm going to take a deeper dive into configuring one of these coder workspaces specifically for the type of development that I do, which is Python, and more specifically, I do a lot of Flask development as a hobby on the side. So, in the video series that I did before on getting the whole all-in-one DevKit slash GitHub in a box up and running, I showed how to create a template and then launch a workspace. And one of the things I realized since then is that if you're running into issues launching your workspace, if you're running Chrome or even Edge, there is a setting that you're probably going to have to do. Because I'm not issuing certificates to make all this infrastructure HTTPS, one of the things you're going to have to do, if you're able to launch a workspace, you probably notice that some of your extensions are probably not behaving quite right. And one of the things you'll probably want to set is in Chrome flags, this insecure origins treated as secure. Essentially, that would just tell Chrome or your browser, if you're using Edge or Chromium or whatever, that even though this is HTTP and it's not really secure, to go ahead and treat it as secure. I'm sure it's better to go ahead and get this all working with proper certificates and all, but because this is just my own self-hosted solution, I do this. Now, every time you launch Chrome, it's going to remind you of that up top. If you can live with that, though, then just adding this will make life easy for you. So that said, another thing that I had noticed last time was when I deployed a template, it had a bunch of JetBrains IDE options in there, and I realized that um, they had added a module block down here in the template to integrate some JetBrains IDE options. I don't use JetBrains, so I just deleted that module, and it cleaned up my template. So if you see that there and you want to get rid of it, that's how you do it. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and launch the container. And I'm going to go into the extensions that I personally set up for my development. Specifically, I had a request to show how I set up Codeium AI for AI coding assistant. I don't really use it a whole lot. I'm just pretty particular about my own coding style, and I don't like having to go back and correct it all the time, but I do enjoy some of its autocomplete features. I think that it speeds up my workflows pretty well and gives me some ideas occasionally, but I don't have it write whole code blocks if I can help it. It kind of goes against the whole having a coding hobby. So, anyways, and then once we get all that set up, some of the settings that I like and the extensions that I like, when you go and deploy a brand new workspace, all that work of your setup is going to get lost, and you have to redo it all. It doesn't take that long, but it would be nice if we could kind of automate it. So what I'll do is I'll lean into the dotfiles mechanism that we explored really briefly in the previous video series, and we'll see how we can leverage it to kind of speed up our customizing our vscode server workspaces. So what I'll do, I'll go ahead and go over to my Git repository, and I'm just going to make one called demo.files. Let's call them .files demo, and create a repository. And I'm going to do this the lazy way, so I'll just add a new file, like we did in .bash aliases, and I'll create just a quick one, alias, we'll say ga equals git add dot, and maybe alias gc equals git commit dash m alias gp equals git push alias gs equals git status and alias gl equals git log. And I don't know, this one's okay. GG for git graph, or I think just say alias g a dog equals git log all decorate one line graph. Anyway, you get the idea. You can add whatever you want. Now, dot files, the default behavior is it will find what ends up happening is when you specify a dot files repo, it will clone this when it's setting up your workspace. And the default behavior is any files it finds with a dot at the beginning, hence dot files, it will just copy them straight into your home directory and call it a day. What we're going to do is we're going to extend that functionality to have it kind of bootstrap or at least automate as much as we can our VS Code settings and whatnot. Eventually, maybe get into like dev containers where we can really kind of make our workspace customizations a lot more declarative, but without having to go down that rabbit hole, we'll see how we can use dot files. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. We'll create this. Let's call this I don't know, video demo. I'll go ahead and put in a dot files URL. Let's crank it up. And it doesn't take long. And you can see what it did is it cloned dot files. It symlinked bash aliases to, if you notice what it did is it actually cloned, well, it cloned my dot files into this directory right here. Home, coder, config, dot files. And it's symlinking them out of there, which we can see when we launch the terminal, that my bash aliases file is actually symlinked over to here. And that's going to be important here in a bit. But we'll get back to that. Just for the moment, I'm just going to make just a demo directory. That way we have some place that we can launch into. So I'm going to go ahead and launch code server. And you're presented with this blank slate here. As I always do, I'll just walk you through how I set mine up for Flask development. You can do whatever you want. So I don't like the command center. I don't like the layout controls. Since I made a directory, I'll go ahead and switch my context to this demo real quick. Oops. Okay. Now, of the first things that I end up doing, Control-Shift-P, set a color theme. I don't like the bright white, so dark plus I think is fine. And I'll go through my extensions first. Now, a note on extensions, if you're not aware, Code Server doesn't use the official Microsoft VS Code Marketplace. They use a different one. And so because of that, not all of the extensions carry over. Most of the major ones do. But if you find that one of your favorite ones isn't available, you can try to shoehorn it in by installing manually. There's no guarantee it'll work. Otherwise, they probably would have done it already. Moved it over. So you may have to make a choice if this whole setup is worth it to you, or you could always use Coder to launch VS Code Desktop, so you don't have to use the web version if you don't want to. But all the ones that I found seem to work. So with that noted, I'm going to go ahead and install Python. That's my primary language I use. Along with that, I'm going to install Better Jinja, since I do a lot of Flask development. We'll use Even Better Toml. It helps when I'm writing my Py project files and tox configurations. I'll use the YAML extension by Red Hat. I'll use the Docker extension to help me with writing Docker files. And finally, I'll talk about codeium. Now, the reason why I choose codeium over some of the other ones is the price is right. The individual plans are free, and it works relatively well. So, let me so in here, you can kind of see this is the biggest reason I like it. I'm not paid to say that I like this one. I use it because the price is right. So to get started on using codeium, you just go in, you create yourself an account, sign up, and that's all you really have to do. Once you signed up, you install the extension. And sometimes getting it working the first time can be a little finicky, but once you kind of figure it out, it works. So it's loading it up, and it wants you to log in. If you click log in here, you click allow, as soon as you click open, it's going to launch codeium, and if you're signed in, it should take you straight to a page where it's going to assign you a token to use. I'm going to pause it real quick and go grab this token because you don't need to see that. So once you've grabbed your token, it says that you should cancel it for manual token sign in. Trust me, leave this box open here because if you close it, it doesn't seem to work right. So I'm just going to do Control Shift P, provide the token. And like I said, sometimes it gets a little finicky on me. And if it does, you can always just kind of cancel it and want to do it again. I don't know why it misbehaves sometimes. Sometimes it takes longer to activate the extension. If it is being ornery, then just cancel it. You can close and reopen. See, there it went. For some reason, this one just acts kind of weird. And then if you try and go back and log in, it's going to say, no, I don't want to. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll just disable it and then re-enable it. Sometimes I'll just close. Yeah, let me try that. Let's close it and then reopen it. Once you put in the token the first time, it's not going to keep asking for it, which is nice. So now it's saying to log in. You have to say that, allow. You'll open, you'll copy it, and you'll come right back. There we go. I'll pause it while I put the token in. And there it goes. It says welcome back. So now we know we're in business. We can create a test file real quick just to make sure that this is working correctly. And sure enough, it's doing its thing. You get the idea. You can keep on going, but we know that it's essentially working. If you want to do chat, you can click on the coding thing here. Just one thing to know, I have my telemetry turned off, so it's telling me that my chat is not working. So you got to have code snippet telemetry turned on. Like I said, I don't really use the chat to generate code, so it's up to you. You on your profile, just make sure your snippet telemetry is turned on if you want to use the chat feature. Onto my settings now that I like for Flask development. Go to settings. This coder in its default configuration generates a lot of auto port forwarding, more than I need, and I honestly don't want it doing that. When I test my applications over and over, because I'm going to use I'm going to use the Coder CLI on my Windows desktop to do port forwarding to the remote endpoint. So because of that, I don't want auto forwarding of ports. I'm going to turn that off. Because I also do Flask development with the debug server, which reloads my project every single time that a file saves. I don't want autosave on. If anything else, I want to put it to a higher delay. I'm just going to turn it off. One of the things I like to do is I don't like the light bulb. That's personal preference. And finally, on my Emmet extension, I had a mapping from Jinja HTML to HTML so I can get HTML snippets working in my Jinja templates. So with all that set up now, and you may have your own settings that you like, the problem is going to be every single time we launch a new workspace, we'll have to redo all this stuff. And I don't want to do that. What I would prefer to do is for it to bootstrap as much as it can on its own. So what we'll do is we're going to try and leverage the power of our dot files to do some of this for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to clone my dot files project over here. So right now, the only thing I have it doing is I'm just putting this bash aliases file into my dot files. And I already said the default behavior is it's just going to take anything that finds with a dot in there and it's going to essentially copy it to your home directory, and it's going to symlink it where it actually clones it down, which is in this path right here. It'll symlink it over here, which is great if you're just doing some bash customizations or whatever, but we're going to try and give it some more advanced or more custom behavior. If you provide, there's a lot of file names that can do this, but if you provide your own install.sh or setup.sh, if it sees that, it will then run that on your behalf, but that does overrule the default behavior, which we'll work with that. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to do install.sh, and what I want this file to do is, since I'm overruling the default behavior, I need to make sure and copy my bash aliases file, or I need to symlink it correctly, and then I'm going to do the same thing with my VS Code extension. So for some better organization, I'm also going to make a .files directory, move my aliases file into .files, make a VS Code directory, and here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of my VS Code not extensions, my VS Code customizations into this directory. In Code Server, you can find where it's saving your settings in .local share code server user. And you'll see we have the settings.json here. You see that? That's all the changes that I've made. So that's great. I want to copy settings.json to my .files demo VS Code folder. So that's good. Now, what I would like to do is I'd like to speed up the process of installing my extensions. So in Code Server, it's going to have a symlink to the binary in your /temp. code server and bin, and that in itself is a symlink, but that's fine. What I can do is run code server -- list -- extensions, and then pipe that to my home directory, .files demo repository, and vscode, and we'll call this code extensions. Okay. And you can see all of my extensions that I installed are in a nice list, and they're canonical names. So that's great. Unfortunately, the .files integrations happen before code server is actually installed, so I actually can't have it auto install my extensions. Kind of a cart before the horse thing, but I can at least help myself out a little bit. What I can do is I might just make a shell script that'll do it. So from here, what we're going to want to do is let's go to this install.sh script. We'll do our shebang file, and bin sh is fine. I want to do a few things. I'll want to clean up any existing bash aliases. So let's do rm-f home directory /bash aliases. And I'll pipe that output to dev null and to &1. There you go. Just that way, I don't need it to redirect the output. And once I've done that, I'm going to symlink home. Well, let's do home directory .config. Honestly, I forget the directory structure. Let's find out. .config coder v2 .files. And you can see there's my actual .files where everything will eventually live. So all right. So we're going to link the .files directory. And in that, we're actually putting a directory called .files .bash. And we're going to symlink it. So there's our source and our target. There we go. That takes care of my bash aliases. Now I want to copy actually, I'll tell you what. We'll do home directory .local share code server user. There we go. Settings.json, we're going to remove the original one. And then what we'll do is we'll symlink in there vscode settings.json to this file here. Copy, paste. So that does my settings. finally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy two things. I'm going to copy code extensions to just my home directory. And then I will also copy that shell script to a home directory. There we go. And that should be about it. So a couple things I need to do is I need to make my install script executable. Let's go into vscode. Let's write this install extensions script real quick. So once this copies, it's going to be back in the home directory, and it's going to be from the same in the same directory. So we're going to say for e in cat code. I'll just say extensions do temp. We're going to call this code server. I forget what it was. Bin, that's what it was. Is that right? Code server, okay. So we'll do that, and we'll say install extension E. Done. Okay, and now let's make this executable. There. So now the expected behavior is that once this clones, it will copy my dot files where they're supposed to go. It will copy the VS Code settings where it's supposed to, or SymLink it where it's supposed to go, and it will actually, it's going to copy my extension setup into my home directory. I could run it right out of here if I want to. So let's we'll say reorganize dot files. Okay, I'll go ahead and push it. Now, theoretically, what should happen, if we want to test this, if we were to restart our workspace, it should see the update to that dot files repo, and we'll see if it actually works or if I royally screwed something up. Here we go. Looks like it did what it was supposed to. If we check the logs, we can see that it did a fast forward on the repository. Everything says it went okay. Let's find out. If we relaunch our terminal, I actually see that my bash aliases is indeed symlinked correctly. If I go to .local share code server user, I can see that my settings have indeed been symlinked correctly. And finally, I can try install extensions. I knew there was going to be something wrong. This should be $E. So close. All right. That should work good now. So what I'm actually going to try is I'm going to stop this workspace and we're going to launch a brand new one that would have no customizations, and we're going to see how well we did. So I've stopped that one. Let's go and launch a brand new workspace. We're going to call this one Video Demo 2. And our dot files is going to come from the same repository. And let's see how we did. So the dot files installation was complete. And it is setting up code server. Okay. We're going to launch. And sure enough, we see that our settings have applied correctly, but we don't have our extensions. So let's fix that real quick. I can do it from the terminal, or I could just open a terminal straight from here, run my install extensions. And you can see it's running down and installing all my extensions. So it's not completely automated, but it's much simpler to bootstrap a brand new development environment and to get up and running. You could try and find a way to automate this more. We could move into something like dev containers. But for now, I think this does really well. So this was already 30 minutes long, went way longer than I wanted to, but this shows you how I set up and I customized my development working environments and just to get everything kind of off the ground and running. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this video, let me know in the comments or drop a like. If you have some ideas for other videos, let me know that too. And thanks a lot. See you next time.